In the sprawling high-tech campus of the Interstellar University of Xenobiology, the atmosphere was perpetually lively, teeming with students from across the galaxy. This diverse assembly showcased a spectrum of colors, sizes, and forms, ranging from the towering crystalline glossy of cryonax to the diminutive buzzing phenians of Zora. They all mingled and learned in an environment that celebrated the richness of life in the universe. One of the university's most esteemed professors, Goran Zelar, a distinguished figure with luminous skin and eyes that shifted hue with his mood, stood at the front of the bustling lecture hall. Today, his eyes were a serene shade of green, reflecting his enthusiasm for the day's subject. He activated the holographic projector, and an image of Earth suspended in space filled the room. Today, we will explore one of the most intriguing and perilous planets in the known universe, Earth, or as it is often called, Terrara. Professor Goran began, his voice resonating with a gravity that instantly silenced the murmuring crowd. This world is designated as a Level 12 Death World, a classification that signifies extreme survival challenges for most known life forms. A ripple of excitement and trepidation spread through the room. A Zorian student, distinguished by his bright blue tentacles, raised a limb. "Professor, what criteria qualify a world as a death world?" "An excellent question," Goran replied. "A planet receives this classification based on several factors: environmental conditions, predatory species, disease prevalence, and the frequency of natural disasters, all of which are extreme on Earth." The room's screens flickered, displaying scenes of Earth's violent storms, vast deserts, deep oceans teeming with predators, and dense forests. Each of these environments, while lethal, is also a cradle of biodiversity, pushing evolution to its limits, Goran explained. At the back of the room, Tim Marsden, a human, observed his classmates' reactions. His face remained impassive, but his eyes gleamed with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. When the images shifted to display humans interacting with various Earth animals and landscapes, some students gasped at the apparent recklessness. "Humans, Earth's native sapiens, have adapted to these conditions over millennia," Goran continued, gesturing towards Tim. "Mr. Marsden here is a testament to the resilience and adaptability required to thrive on such a planet." Tim nodded slightly, acknowledging his role as an anomaly in this diverse academic setting. "Surviving on Earth doesn't just come from physical strength or speed, it's about wit, will, and respect for the environment." Goran smiled, pleased with Tim's input. "Indeed, and that is why tomorrow we will embark on a field trip to Earth. You will observe, learn, and experience what it means to interact with a Death World environment firsthand. Prepare yourselves for a challenging and enlightening experience." As the class was dismissed, the students clustered around Tim, eager to learn more about his homeworld. Despite their advanced technologies and diverse backgrounds, Earth intrigued and daunted them. Tim felt a surge of responsibility and excitement. He was not just a student, but a bridge between worlds, ready to guide his peers into the heart of his challenging home planet. The interstellar transport vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing from the friction of re-entry. Inside the cabin, a tense silence prevailed, broken only by the occasional hum of the ship's systems and the soft whir of personal life support suits being adjusted. Outside the windows, the swirling clouds parted to reveal the vast expanse of the North American wilderness below. Tim Marsden watched his classmates as they peered out, their expressions a blend of wonder and nervous anticipation. "Nothing like the simulators, right?" he joked, attempting to lighten the mood. A Galaxian girl named Zara, with skin that shimmered like the surface of a starlit pond, nodded, her large eyes wide. "It's beautiful and so vast," she whispered, almost to herself. The vessel landed smoothly in a clearing surrounded by towering pine trees. As the students disembarked, they were immediately enveloped by the fresh, earthy scent of the forest. The air was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the recycled atmosphere of the ship. "Remember, stay close and follow the safety protocols we discussed," Professor Goran instructed as he led the group away from the landing site, his eyes now a cautious shade of amber scanning the surroundings alertly. As they trekked deeper into the woods, the reality of Earth's untamed nature began to unfold around them. Sudden sounds, the rustling of leaves, a distant howl, the snap of a twig, caused several students to startle, their heads swiveling in the direction of each new noise. "Those are just the normal sounds of the forest," Tim explained, noticing their reactions. "Most creatures here are more scared of you than you are of them." The group encountered their first wildlife, a deer that stood statuesquely among the trees before bounding gracefully away. Cameras clicked and whirred as the students captured the moment, their earlier apprehension giving way to fascination. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a sense of unease crept back among the group. Night on Earth was a different beast, and Tim could see the uncertainty in his classmates' eyes. "We'll set up camp here," Professor Gorin decided, pointing to a relatively clear area near a stream. "Tim, perhaps you could help gather firewood. The rest of you start setting up the tents." Gathering around the crackling fire later, the students shared their initial impressions. "It's one thing to read about Earth's biodiversity and quite another to experience it," offered a Thulian student named VX, his skin flickering with bioluminescent light. "Everything here feels so alive." "It is, das base," Jim agreed, tossing another log onto the it. "And at night, it comes alive in a different way. You'll see soon enough." As darkness enveloped the campsite, the true chorus of the night began. Owls hooted, insects chirped, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled, a sound that sent a shiver through the group. "Welcome to Earth," Tim said, a half-smile playing on his lips as he watched his classmates huddle closer to the fire, their eyes wide with a blend of fear and awe. "The night is just beginning." The first night on Earth was an orchestral performance of natural sounds that none of the alien students had ever experienced. The chorus of nocturnal creatures played a symphony that was both enchanting and unnerving. As they sat around the fire, the shadows cast by the flames danced on their faces, reflecting the flicker of emotions crossing their minds. Tim, familiar with Earth's darker hours, took the first watch, letting the others try to get some sleep. He sat with his back against a tree, a small scanner in his hand, monitoring the nearby wildlife activity. He knew the likelihood of a dangerous encounter was minimal, but vigilance was a habit hardwired into any Earthborn. A rustle in the underbrush caught his attention. Switching off the scanner, Tim stood quietly, his eyes scanning the darkness. A figure emerged, the gray silhouette of a wolf, its eyes catching the light from the fire and glowing briefly. Tim remained still. His training on Earth had taught him that sudden movements could provoke a charge. "Why isn't it attacking?" a whispered voice asked from behind him. Rex had woken up and was watching the scene unfold with wide, luminescent eyes. "Wolves aren't usually aggressive unless threatened or desperate," Tim whispered back. "This one is just curious. Watch." They observed in silence as the wolf sniffed the air, its ears twitching at every crackle from the fire. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the wolf gave a small huff and turned, disappearing back into the woods as silently as it had arrived. "That was incredible," Rex breathed out, his voice a mix of relief and wonder. "It's all about respect," Tim said, sitting back down. "Mutual respect. You give them their space, they'll give you yours." The rest of the night passed without incident. By morning, the students were buzzing with the night's experience, their fear replaced by a thrilling sense of having touched something wild and untamed. As they broke camp, Professor Gorin gathered them for a brief talk. "Today we'll head deeper into the forest," he announced. "Keep your scanners ready and stay alert. Remember, every part of Earth, from the smallest insect to the largest predator, has adapted to survive. You must do the same." The group moved out, heading toward a denser part of the forest. The trees grew taller and the shadows deeper. As they walked, Tim pointed out different plants and their uses from medicinal to poisonous. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. A tree, weakened by disease and further assaulted by recent storms, was falling. Quick as a flash, Tim shouted, "Move!" and pushed a nearby student out of the way. The tree crashed down where she had been standing seconds before, sending a cloud of birds shrieking into the sky. Breathing heavily, the student, A Fenian named Keel looked up at Tim with wide eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice quivering. "That's Earth for you," Tim said, clapping her on the back gently. "Always expect the unexpected." The incident shook the group, but it also bonded them. They became more attentive to their surroundings, their senses heightened by the realization of the constant vigilance required on a death world. As evening approached, they reached a wide river, its waters rushing loudly. "We'll camp here for the night," Professor Gorin decided. "This is a good place to learn about aquatic ecosystems." The students set up camp with practiced efficiency this time, their movements more confident. They gathered around the fire, sharing stories of their homeworlds as the stars began to appear overhead. Despite the dangers, there was no place they would rather be at that moment than Earth, learning and living on a world so full of life and lessons. "Today was a good day," Tim said as he looked around at his friends. "Every day you learn something new is a good day on Earth." And as the fire crackled and the river sang, the alien students felt a growing respect for the beautiful, deadly planet. They were beginning to understand. The tranquility of the riverside camp was abruptly shattered early the next morning by a foreboding shift in the atmosphere. The air turned heavy, charged with an electric tension that made the hairs on Tim's neck stand on end. Dark clouds gathered swiftly overhead, blotting out the early morning sun and casting the landscape in a gloomy pall. "Storm's coming," Tim announced, looking up at the swirling clouds. He had seen many storms on Earth, and the signs were unmistakable. "We need to secure the camp and find shelter. This one looks severe." The students scrambled to action, hastening to reinforce their tents and secure any loose items. Professor Goran directed them with a calm urgency, aware of the potential danger but also seeing the educational value in experiencing Earth's raw power firsthand. As the first heavy drops of rain pelted down, the wind began to howl, whipping the trees into a frenzied dance. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by the deep, ominous rumble of thunder. The river beside them swelled rapidly, its waters churning and frothing. "Everyone into the main tent!" Professor Goran shouted over the roar of the wind. "It's designed to withstand stronger winds and lightning strikes." Huddled together in the tent, the students watched in awe and fear as nature unleashed its fury. Outside, the tent shuddered and strained against the tempest, but held firm, a testament to Earth engineering adapted for extreme conditions. "This is what we call a thunderstorm," Tim explained, raising his voice to be heard. "They can be dangerous, but they are also vital to Earth's ecological balance. They help replenish water supplies and bring life-giving moisture to the land." The storm raged for hours, an endless display of lightning, thunder, and torrential rain. When it finally began to abate, the exhausted but exhilarated students emerged to a transformed world. The air was fresh and crisp, filled with the scent of wet earth and foliage. The river had risen significantly, but was beginning to recede slowly. "We were safe, but this was a mild storm by Earth standards," Tim noted as they surveyed the area for any damage. "It's a reminder of how fierce this planet can be." The group spent the rest of the day recovering from the storm's impact, repairing their camp, and discussing what they had learned about weather patterns and survival under extreme conditions. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the damp forest, a rainbow arched majestically across the sky, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the day's earlier darkness. "This planet, it's alive," murmured Zara, staring at the rainbow with a sense of wonder. "Even its anger is beautiful." "That's Earth for you," Tim replied with a smile. "It's harsh, but it also teaches us about beauty and resilience. You never know what you're going to get, but it's always going to be something worth learning." After the storm, the world seemed refreshed and vibrant. Leaves dripped with moisture, and the air was alive with the renewed calls of birds and insects. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, drying the soaked earth and warming their backs, Professor Goran gathered the students in a sunlit clearing. "Today, as we prepare to conclude our field trip, I want you to reflect on your experiences here," he began, his voice carrying over the gentle rustle of the breeze through the trees. "Think about the challenges you faced and the lessons you've learned from Earth, this so-called death world." One by one, the students shared their insights. A Galaxian student named Lenara spoke of her newfound appreciation for Earth's dynamic weather systems, which, despite their potential ferocity, played a crucial role in sustaining life. I've learned that what might initially appear dangerous or hostile can actually be vital and life-giving, she said. The storm was terrifying, but it also brought necessary water to the region and helped nourish the ecosystem. VX, the Thulian student, shared his thoughts on Earth's flora and fauna. Back home, we live in controlled environments where everything is predictable. Here, every plant, every animal has adapted to survive in ways we can hardly imagine. It's a constant struggle, but also a powerful drive towards innovation and resilience. Tim listened to his classmates and felt a surge of pride. On Earth, we have a saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." That's very much the essence of living on a death world. You learn to respect the environment, to understand its signals, and adapt accordingly. Professor Goran nodded, his eyes reflecting pride. Exactly, Tim. Earth teaches us about the strength inherent in life. It shows us that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving, adapting, and growing stronger through adversity. He turned to the class, his gaze encompassing each of the students. Your time here has been short, but the lessons are profound. Earth has tested you, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. These lessons, I hope, will stay with you, influencing how you interact with your own worlds. As the discussion wound down, the group packed up their gear for the last time. They made their way back to the landing site, each step taking them closer to departure, but further ingrained with the experiences they had endured. Before boarding the ship, they took one last look at the Earth landscape around them. The trees stood tall and proud, the river flowed gently by, and the air was filled with the peaceful chirping of birds. Remember, Professor Goran said as they climbed aboard, the lessons from a death world are not about fear or danger, they're about understanding the balance of life, respecting the forces of nature and the power of adaptation. These are lessons for life, wherever you may go. As the spaceship lifted off, leaving Earth's atmosphere, the students watched through the windows as the planet that had taught them so much receded into the distance. There was a collective feeling of gratitude and a mutual understanding that they were taking a part of Earth with them in their hearts and minds. Earth is not just a death world, Tim said, watching his home planet shrink to a blue dot. It's a world that teaches life. And with those final words, they set course back to the stars, each student forever changed by their encounter with the death world called Earth. As the spaceship soared away from Earth, the students settled into their seats, each absorbed in reflection. The ship was quiet, save for the low hum of the engines and the occasional murmur of conversation. The Earth, with all its raw beauty and relentless challenges, had left an indelible mark on each of them. Tim Marsden watched the blue globe fade into the vastness of space, feeling a mix of relief and melancholy. He had been proud to show his classmates his home, a planet that demanded respect and offered invaluable lessons in return. Professor Goran moved through the cabin, checking on his students. He stopped by Tim, noting the contemplative look on his face. You did well, Tim. It was important for them to see Earth through the eyes of someone who knows it as home. Tim nodded. I hope they understand now why we call it a death world and why we love it so much. They do, Goran assured him. And more importantly, they've gained a perspective that will enrich their understanding of their own worlds. You've given them a gift. The conversation drifted to the students' reactions. Zara, the Galaxian who had first commented on Earth's vastness, now appreciated the complex interplay of its ecosystems. Rex and Lenara discussed plans to incorporate some of the survival tactics they'd learned into their studies and possibly their home environments. As the spaceship continued its journey back to the Interstellar University of Xenobiology, the students gathered one last time to share their final thoughts. I used to think that strength was about power and control, Rex started, his voice thoughtful. But Earth taught me that true strength lies in adaptability and resilience. It's about thriving under conditions that are far from ideal. Lenara added, and I learned about balance, the storm, the wildlife, the changing seasons. All of it exists in a delicate balance that sustains life. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Professor Goran listened, satisfied with their insights. These lessons are what make Earth unique as a teaching environment. It's not just about the challenges it presents, but about how it forces us to think, adapt, and ultimately grow. As the discussion faded and the students prepared for the final leg of their journey, Tim looked around at his classmates. They were no longer just fellow students. They were survivors of a death world, bonded by a shared experience that would influence the rest of their lives. "We survived a death world," said Zara, her voice now steady and confident. Tim smiled at her and at the others. "It's home," he said simply, "and it teaches you to live, not just survive." The spaceship entered the warp sequence, the stars stretching into lines as they sped towards their distant university. Professor Goran's final words echoed in the quiet of the ship. "Remember," he said as the familiar features of the galaxy began to warp around them, "the lessons from a death world are lessons for life. They teach us to respect nature, to adapt to our environment, and to cherish the life we have. Carry these lessons forward in your studies and beyond." The students nodded, a sense of unity among them. Earth had changed them, not just as students of xenobiology, but as beings capable of seeing the beauty in the challenges, the lessons in the hardships, and as the ship moved through the cosmos, each student carried with them a piece of Earth, a reminder that even a death world could teach the most valuable lessons about life.